Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. We have some awesome news coming from the southern part of Ukraine, where the defense forces Kaputted a very expensive radar for the Russian army. It's called Neba-U. It's already been Kaputted in September and November, so for the first time this year, Ukraine repeated the attack. Just a short update, actually this radar was Kaputted on the Russian territory of the Bryansk Oblast, so not in Ukraine. Neba-U is a very sophisticated radar system with a range up to 700 kilometers, so the vast territory of Ukraine was covered by this radar. So we have the official statement from the Ukrainian side. Hopefully we're gonna also obtain some of the images, but it's very unlikely because Russia restricts everything to be published on the internet. Probably again we're gonna see some of the drone or satellite images. The price of the single unit is more than $100 million, very expensive thing. Russia again modernizes their tanks. We have a new unit which looks pretty similar to the previous turtle tank design. The Russian tanks now look more like houses rather than tanks. They also mount the anti-drone systems just on top of those vehicles. And here's the video of the tank. It is under the artillery fire, but still it continues on its way. The drones are unable to hit this unit because of the probably anti-drone warfare. The Western public call those tanks Blyad-mobile. You know, we may laugh at it, but definitely those tanks are successful on the front lines, yet I haven't watched the videos with those tanks being destroyed with FPV drones. Usually they perform their missions, they go back and later on are Kaputted by, for example, HIMARS. This is what happened to this first generation of this Blyad-mobile. As you see, drones not only change the way of how to conduct the military missions right on the front lines, but also they change the army vehicles themselves. Right, let's speak about a very important topic for Ukraine, the military package from the United States, the military support basically of Ukraine. We have tons of news relative to Mike Johnson's statement recently. He wants to introduce 4 of the separate bills to the House for the voting, for supporting Israel, supporting Ukraine, Taiwan, and national security bill. So as predicted, he doesn't want to put the current supported by Senate bill for voting in Congress, which potentially might make all of this process very long. So the initiative now goes for the House of the Representatives, then it will go to Senate. Senate might implement some of the amendments to the proposals, then it will go back to the House of the Representatives, and Mike Johnson would have to put this bill for voting in House. Will he do it? Well, it's under the huge question. So the situation with the new military bill is very dangerous for Ukraine. The best case scenario is to support the current one. But because of the political chaos, I might say this word, yes indeed, there is political chaos in the United States, which paralyzes the work of Congress at least. Also thankfully to this guy. Because of that, Ukraine is out of the military support. Moreover, with the new risks, it's a very challenging time for Ukraine to obtain the military support. Hopefully it will be voted. At least Mike Johnson said that they intend to support Ukraine with military aid. But something tells me that it won't be that easy. This document was leaked today, and here for Ukrainian deal, the separate bill for Ukrainian military support, we have just 48.43 billion United States dollars. In a current bill, let me remind you, it's around 61 billion. So here we have much less sum for Ukrainian support. At least I see it like that if this document is legit. However, if you put everything together, you'll not have $95.34 billion. So maybe something is not really here. The full information about the case I posted on my Patreon page. You may find the link for it in a video description just below, or you may just scan the QR code available on the screen. By joining my Patreon, you also support my channel, because recently YouTube restricted many of my videos, so I have to rely on your support on the other platforms. Saying so, we have one more pro-Ukrainian YouTuber reporting from Ukraine with almost 500,000 subscribers. It is one of the biggest pro-Ukrainian channels. I don't know who is behind this channel because it's the faceless channel. We just heard the voice with some of the map reviews and the other stuff which I also show on my channel, so the content is very similar. They have not just the English-speaking channel, but many of the other channels which show the same picture but on different languages. So YouTube started to demonetize most of the channels and even delete many of those. As you see, they still have the English channel, the main one. And here's the last video where this YouTuber or YouTubers, because I think there is a team behind this channel, they show the messages from YouTube, how it canceled 2 of the channels and removed monetization from 3 of the channels at least. So you see how vulnerable it is to be a Ukrainian or pro-Ukrainian YouTuber nowadays. So you might be under the bot attack, which I believe could happen in this case. If you want to understand more, you may check out this particular video. I will put it in a video description just below. And this channel also shares the information that it has Patreon page. So Patreon is the way for you guys to support our job online, because we are unable to rely on YouTube any longer. However, YouTube is still a biggest video platform with no real competitors. So even without monetization, with the help of the Patreon, we may continue to do this job on YouTube. A report from Ukraine didn't say about any kind of the actions that we should do to help this channel. We'll see how it goes in the future. As you probably know, German Chancellor Scholz visited China. Chinese leader called Europe to cease the support of Ukraine, plus initiate the peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. So basically, China wants to make resistance for Ukraine impossible. Chancellor Scholz didn't agree on that. He tried to convince Xi Jinping to stop Russia, because China has a real influence on Russian Federation. Scholz called Putin's military campaign insane. He added that China has weight in Russia. But from the picture I see, this war is very profitable for China. First of all, it weakens the Russian Federation and West, which have to support Ukraine in this war. For China, Russia is not a real friend, but rather a current partner, which they use to exceed their own goals. China doesn't really need a country with the largest world nuclear arsenal bordering them. In Chinese propaganda media, we see how China potentially interested in taking Siberian regions under their control. So the current friendship between Russia and China is not a friendship after all. Actually, Russia has no other choice rather than to follow Beijing's policy, because China supports them with equipment, with technologies and everything they need to continue the war, so it is very profitable for China. But what about our Western allies, for example, the United States of America? President Zelensky said that the United States are not interested for Ukraine to win. Otherwise, they would supply everything needed for Ukraine to win in this war, and they wouldn't apply any sort of the restrictions for Ukrainian military operations. Zelensky openly said that the United States, afraid that Russia would start to collapse, that China would take the part of Russia, that something would go wrong to the Russian nuclear arsenal after all. Before, I heard those theories just from unofficial media sources, but here we have the statement from the president of the country, confirming the ideas that were floating in the air. Well, I personally think that Zelensky is right. The United States are not interested for Russia to collapse right now. At least they think that it could bring chaos to the world. But my advice that it's better to be prepared for this sort of this scenario when Russia would start to just collapse. Because this process is imminent. Nothing would stop it. It is just a matter of time, and Putin, with his full-scale war against Ukraine, just made it more closer. Unfortunately, Ukraine is the country which is suffering here. Plus, strangely, the world is not going to help Ukraine fully at this stage at least. We see just a limited support of Ukraine, with some of the leaders and politicians calling for negotiations with Russia, trading Ukrainian territory for peace agreements, which Russia wouldn't like to follow. Their aim is to occupy Ukraine. But by taking Ukraine, the part of Ukraine, Russia will just choke to death. One of the NATO Navy commanders said that there is a huge vulnerability of the underwater cables which go across the Baltic Sea and not only. And they're used for communications, including internet, so potentially Russia or China might cut the signal for a vast majority of the European population. It's one of the main threats which NATO should consider. It's interesting, but Russia is reinforcing their defense alongside the shore of Crimea. They're building more and more defense lines, probably waiting for Ukrainian assault operation or landing operation in peninsula. Previously, the preparation for the possible operation in Crimea was announced by Davydov, the chief of Ukrainian military intelligence. I think that definitely it could be done this year. At the same time, Forbes publishes the information that the attack on Crimea might lead to the nuclear war. That was the warning from the Russian side directly to Elon Musk. Elon Musk believed in this bluffing and cancelled the signal over Crimea. Ukraine begged Elon Musk to turn on the signal again, but Elon Musk refused to do so. However, now Pentagon is responsible for some of the antennas, some of the Starlink units, so Ukraine is using those in the drone boats. Reuters says that there was the agreement about the Black Sea shipping, which was almost reached by Turkey, Russia and Ukraine. However, at the very last moment, Ukraine refused to sign this agreement. Strange why, but I think that Ukraine is now capable to achieve a safe transportation of the cargo ships along the Black Sea with the help of the drone boats. The Russian Navy ships are basically stuck in their ports, afraid to operate as before. Alright, now let's go to the front lines review. I want to start the review from the positive news, which are coming from the Vuhledar direction. Vuhledar is like a fortress for Ukraine, so this settlement is being targeted by Russians for a very long time, and today Russians decided to go and take it. One more stupid attempt from their side, and obviously they were absolutely demolished. Many of the tanks, MTLBs, BTRs were Kaputted mostly by Ukrainian FPV drones. Guys, there is a video, but unfortunately I cannot publish it for you on this platform. Otherwise I'll have troubles with YouTube, so I highly recommend you to subscribe for my Telegram channel, where I post the images like that about what is happening actually on the front lines. Drone images, news and analytics from my side. So Telegram is one more alternate source for me to keep you updated. It is for free, but if you want to support my channel, you may still join my Patreon page, and there I also share some of the unique information. Many of the Russian vehicles were targeted out there. Complete demolishment of the Russian convoy once again at the same direction, but they did not hesitate to launch the attacks again and again. At some point they could be successful, but Vuhledar is very hard nut for them. However, at some of the other directions, like for example Ocheretne, Russia advanced, so we may check it over here. Yesterday and today. Yes, indeed, they moved towards this settlement to the private sector of it. Again, it is happening in Avdiivka direction. This is the Avdiivka town. Russia also advanced a little in Berdiche. Yesterday, today, the gray area has expanded. Krasnohorivka, it's near to Marinka. Yesterday, today. Not a huge advancement, but still gray area expansion too. South of the Donetsk Oblast, Ruzzian expansion of gray area too. So for today, just a light advancement in Avdiivka direction, that's it. If we speak about the red zone expansion. So from the front lines perspective, the day is not good for the Russian side. Not as successful as before at least, with their convoy being ambushed. A very simple way to harm the Russian supplies using those spikes which are being dropped by the drones. It usually leads to this kind of the picture for the Russian Urals. Kind of the strange move from Pavel Durov, who is the founder of Telegram. He gave the interview to the Tucker Carlson. What did Pavel say on his Telegram channel? As a leader of politically neutral platform, it's my responsibility to speak to journalists representing different political views. In February, I did the interview with liberal journalists. On the same day, I spoke with Tucker Carlson, who is famously conservative. However, he published the link to the Tucker Carlson channel, not to unknown, basically, liberal journalists, so I consider it as a propaganda from Pavel Durov, sharing the link for the Tucker Carlson page and for this interview. But still, after all, I'll have my page on Telegram because of the low censorship and because there is much less propaganda compared to the X platform. Telegram is also being used for the fundraise for Ukrainian army, so I will continue to use it, but I'll look more closer to it. Well, I listened to the part of the interview where Durov actually admitted that Russian government really wanted to receive the data from the users, not just in Russia, but also in Ukraine. It happened during the time of the revolution in Ukraine and also during the time of the large protests back in 2010, as I remember, in Russia. So under the huge pressure from the Russian FSB, Pavel Durov had to sell his Kontakty social network and leave Russia. After that, he founded Telegram. And now, my friends, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And as always, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.